It's time for us on the Political Insider to talk about our Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. The latest scandal to hit the sky is that his wife's twin sister, Kumo Bogatsu, and a good friend of his, Moses Tembe, have managed to win the lottery. Now, I'm not saying that ironically. They literally are part of the winning tender to run the South African lottery. Now, this is just a license to print money. It has been a source of corruption for 25 years. Whoever wins the tender makes an enormous amount of money, and they only have 5 years to feed at the trough. I think it's 6 years, a stretch, and then they hand it over to another set of comrades. Obviously, it's the same machinery, and all that happens is those guys take their money, go live in Dubai, the next guys come in, do not so much but maintain a system, and then they go off into the sunset with their money at our expenses. Now, we've done a thing on the lottery as to whether South Africa needs one. Just remember, a lottery is a tax on people that can't do mathematics, because you've got almost no chance of winning, but you're spending a small amount of money for potentially big payout. So it's worth doing it just in case. That's sort of the logic. But what ends up happening is that the lottery operator makes millions and millions of rand, which they then keep. Some they distribute, and as we've seen, some get distributed to the comrades, but basically it's meant to go to good causes, which it invariably doesn't really achieve. So let's go back to Paul Mashatile and his sister-in-law being part of the winning bid to run the lottery. Now, the Lottery Act specifically says that nobody can run the lottery if they are connected with any politicians. Well, good luck with that. We've got two people very high up that are intimately involved with the government and Paul Mashatile. But Paul Mashatile is starting to look a lot like Jacob Zuma, but without the charisma. Because this guy, trouble seems to follow him, but he doesn't have the standing and the support and just the nice feel that Jacob Zuma gives people to get away with it. You remember Jacob Zuma could do anything, and everybody would flock to hear him talk and maybe give a giggle and maybe sing a song, do a dance. Paul Mashatile can do none of that. He has no real constituency. He burst on the scene when he was Premier of Gauteng, and the so-called Alex Mafia, a group of people from Alexandra Township that were running Gauteng, and basically, working on the old basis that their friends would get the tenders, nothing would really get done. So in Gauteng, the roads are a mess. We had the e-tolls fiasco, hospitals don't work, etc. Where's the money? Well, it's gone to the Alex Mafia and their mates. So this vice president of ours earns 3 million rand a year officially. He lives in a house in Waterfall City here in northern Johannesburg, which if he had to bond over 20 years would cost him 380,000 rand a month in installments. He then also lives in a 30 million rand mansion down in Constantia in the Cape. But it turns out both houses are owned by his son-in-law, who also happens to be a tenderpreneur. Now, I don't know about you. I lived through the Zuma years, and I know that people that have generally got these kind of problems swirling around them, remember Jacob Zuma started with Shabir Shaik and the arms deal, and then it progressed from there to 5 volumes of the Zondo Commission. I'm not so sure that South Africa can afford to do this again. So quite clearly there are people in the ANC who think exactly the same thing. Why do I say that? Because news keeps on slipping out of more and more of Paul Mashatile's malfeasance. Right? We also know that his way of staying in power, whereas Zuma was prepared to tackle people head on, use his charisma, use his political nous to outsmart people that weren't so smart. People like Thabo Mbeki, he was able to outsmart him. And he did a great job, until finally the ANC realized that they had to get rid of him. But in this case, Paul Mashatile's tactic is to cozy up to specifically the EFF that he seems to have a very, very good relationship with, that also have their own questionable funding. So, his whole big shtick is that if he becomes president of the country, and he said this in many dog whistles, he would end the current government of national unity and go into a government of national unity with definitely the EFF and probably Mkhonto Wesizwe, basically working as a low-level mob boss. And quite clearly, there are people within the ANC that don't like this idea at all. So, what's busy happening with Paul Mashatile? Well, it looks like every misstep is being put on display through the media. Media 24 seems to be a very, very good network for this. And every week there's another Paul Mashatile story. The only problem is that he just doesn't have the likability that you need for people to go out and wreck their careers by defending him. Now, we saw people that were prepared to wreck their careers by defending Jacob Zuma, and in some cases make their careers. I mean, somebody like, Batubile Dlamini, she would never be a cabinet minister in a million years if it wasn't for somebody like Jacob Zuma. I mean, really, Blade and Zamandi. It was a good trade for these people because they really didn't have the ability themselves to manage to run, to get those positions that they got. So it made sense for them. But we also had people like Pravin Gordhan, who was prepared to rescue, to be Jacob Zuma's bagman. I don't see the people that are prepared to wreck their careers to rescue Paul Mashatile. And in my opinion, I'd be very, very surprised if he got any votes in the next ANC elective conference in 2027. But let's keep an eye on this. This one with the lottery has got some way to run. I think that this is going to be a major, major problem for the lottery, and I think they better line up a few other tenderpreneurs for that role. That's been the Political Insider. We'll see you again soon.